Have you ever found yourself in like a really busy room, maybe a big conference, or even just a family get-together, where everyone's talking, but it feels like nobody's actually understanding each other? Or maybe you've been involved in a huge project, something, really ambitious that felt like it was genuinely reaching for the stars.
Well, today we're doing a deep dive into a really ancient, epic story that kind of captures both of those feelings. The legendary Tower of Babel. It's this incredible tale of, well, grand ambition, maybe even hubris, a really baffling linguistic mystery, and honestly, a profound lesson about human nature that still feels surprisingly relevant today.
Right, and our mission here is to sort of peel back the layers of this iconic narrative. Is it purely myth, just a story? Or is there maybe some historical truth buried in there? And critically, what can it teach us now about unity, division, that constant human drive to build something massive? We'll be looking at the biblical accounts, archaeological insights, and how it's echoed through culture for centuries. Yeah, so picture this. Ancient Babylon, buzzing with people, thousands of them. And they all speak one language, imagine that. United by this single, incredibly bold dream. Build a tower that literally reaches heaven. That's where it all kicks off.
The Tower of Babel. It's really more than just an old story, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
It's like this echo in our collective heads, this whisper about ambition, trying to be united, but then also why we're so divided.
Exactly. That tension is key.
Most people, I think, know the basics, right? Big tower, one language, and then bam, total chaos.
Right, the communication breakdown.
But what if it's not just about, a literal building? What if it's really digging into how we even understand each other? Or fail to?
That's a great way to put it, the architecture of understanding. I like that.
So today, yeah, we're doing a deep dive into the Tower of Babel legend. It's this amazing mix of faith, culture, human drive. It just goes way beyond its biblical roots.
It really does.
For thousands of years, it's got people talking, arguing, painting, writing, thinking. It just grabs you, doesn't it?
It has incredible staying power.
And it really makes you look past the, the bricks and mortar and ask, well, what does it mean to build something big? And, well, what happens when we aim too high?
Or maybe aim without thinking things through properly.
Right. So what's our mission for this deep dive?
Well, our mission today is really to unpack Babel, to get into its symbolism, which is incredibly rich, look at the history it might be touching on, and maybe most importantly, figure out what lessons it still holds for you right now in today's world.
Okay.
Because it's not just retelling an old tale. It's, like you said, it's a timeless story about unity, division, communication, both the power and the problems, and, what it means to be human and ambitious.
Trying to make sense of it all.
Exactly. Think of it as a shortcut, maybe, to understanding why we still struggle so much to find common ground.
Okay, let's get into it. Let's unpack that core story, but maybe not just like a book report, More like, what are the big ideas packed in there?
Right, the foundations.
So most people know it from Genesis, the book of Genesis. It kicks off after the Great Flood. Humanity's basically starting over, and everyone speaks the same language.
Can you even imagine?
Seriously, like no lost in translation moments, no awkward phrase books, just clear communication.
Instant understanding.
And that single language, well, it fueled a single massive ambition. Genesis says they journeyed east, found this plain in Shinar, that's ancient Mesopotamia, basically. and settled there.
Okay, so they're all together, all understanding each other.
Exactly. And with that unity, they decide, let's do something huge. They plan to build a city and the centerpiece, a tower. A tower with its top in the heavens.
Ah, the famous line, reaching for the sky.
And their reasons are really important here. They say, let's make a name for ourselves, and also let's make sure we not be scattered over the face of the whole earth.
So it's about fame, reputation.
Yeah, and control, right, sticking together. It wasn't just construction, it was like this bold statement, making themselves famous, building this human-focused unity, maybe even pushing back against any idea they should spread out.
Like defying a natural or divine impulse to disperse?
Could be. This tower was meant to be their monument to their genius, their power, their desire to stay put, centralized, almost like declaring independence, We got this.
Human self-sufficiency on a grand scale.
Totally. And that's exactly when things take a turn.
Right, because this massive project, this symbol of human unity and ambition, it doesn't go unnoticed.
No, God sees it. And the response described in Genesis, it isn't just like angry zapping, it's more strategic, transformative. God sees their pride, right? This drive to climb up, maybe reach the divine level, push past limits, make their own name, build their own unity, maybe separate from or even against God's will.
That element of defiance seems crucial in many interpretations.
So God steps in, and the method is fascinatingly specific. He confuses their language.
Just pulls the rug out from under their communication.
That perfect understanding, gone. Just noise. A babble, right? Which is where the name comes from.
Ah, the etymology built right in.
And imagine trying to build something that complex, needing coordination, specific instructions, when suddenly nobody understands anybody else. Construction just stops, dead in its tracks.
Chaos. Total breakdown of the project.
And then, because they can't communicate, can't work together, can't even understand basic requests anymore, the text says they get scattered over the face of all the earth. It's like a natural consequence. People stick with those they can understand.
Forming different language groups, different tribes, nations.
Right. So in the biblical view, it's not just a failed building project. It's the origin story for why we have so many languages, so many cultures, why people are spread out everywhere instead of in one big clump.
It's a powerful explanation for diversity.
Yeah, it's about ambition hitting a wall, but maybe also, some might say, about a kind of divine wisdom in encouraging diversity instead of letting one single, potentially overbearing power dominate.
That's a really interesting take. Diversity as a positive outcome, even if born from confusion.
What's just so gripping about it, though, is how this story, even with its, very religious frame and sort of fantastical elements, connects so deeply with things we all experience. Things that go way beyond any one belief system.
You mean like ambition, failure?
Yeah, it taps right into that basic human drive to achieve something great, to push boundaries, build something lasting, and also the way things can spectacularly backfire when that ambition isn't balanced with, humility, wisdom.
Yeah, the consequences of overreach. It really holds up a mirror, doesn't it?
Totally. It shows our amazing ability to work together to create incredible things, but also how easily we can mess it up if pride gets in the way.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And it offers this poetic but really persuasive explanation for something as fundamental as why we speak different languages and have different cultures.
Yeah.
It does it in a way that just resonates. It feels timeless.
It speaks to everyone somehow.
It really does. You got historians looking for actual physical traces, archaeologists digging around Mesopotamia, linguists think about this mythological take on language origins, that deep feeling maybe we lost some universal tongue. Believers find all sorts of moral and spiritual lessons in it about obedience, pride, God's power. But even if you approach it completely secularly, the sheer drama of it, unity, ambition, confusion, scattering, it's compelling.
It works on so many levels.
It really functions as this potent mirror, like you said. It shows us our potential for unity, what we could achieve if we really collaborated, but also the tragic ways we keep falling into division, often because of our own actions.
It highlights how that very drive for greatness, if it's not checked, if it ignores the bigger picture or realistic limits, can actually lead to the opposite outcome: fragmentation, chaos.
Precisely. It makes it such a powerful and frankly enduring reflection of us, our triumphs and our struggles.
Okay, so shifting gears a bit, let's move beyond just the story itself and think about it more as a myth. What kind of deeper symbolism is packed in there, especially when you compare it to other ancient stories?
Right. Looking at it through that mythological lens is really insightful.
At its heart, Babel is just soaked in these big universal themes, isn't it? Human pride, that ambition that kind of tips over into arrogance, hubris, and then the idea that there are consequences, divine or cosmic punishment for going too far.
Yeah, those are classic mythological tropes.
And like a lot of foundational myths, its job, in a way, is to explain stuff that ancient people couldn't otherwise figure out. Here, it's the puzzle of languages. Why are there so many? And cultures, too, springing from those languages. It gives this dramatic origin story.
A way to make sense of a complex reality.
And it's also clearly a moral lesson, right? A warning. Hey, there are limits to human pride. Don't try to climb too high. Don't defy the gods or the natural order.
Absolutely. And if you place it in that wider context, comparing mythologies, well, Babel isn't totally alone in warning against arrogance.
Right, you see similar ideas elsewhere.
Oh, definitely. You think about the Greeks, Icarus flying too close to the sun, Prometheus stealing fire and getting punished. Other cultures in the Near East also had legends about mortals challenging the gods and being brought down.
So it's a common theme.
It is.
Oh.
But Babel stands out. It has this unique punch because of how the punishment happens. It's the confusion of language itself.
That's the really clever part.
It is. It doesn't just stop a building project. It attacks the very foundation of cooperation, of shared meaning. It dismantles the one thing that made the whole ambitious project possible in the first place.
It hits humanity where it hurts our ability to connect.
Precisely. The sheer scale of the ambition aiming for the heavens, coupled with that profound, lasting consequence of scattering people through language. It gives the Babel story a unique weight. It's a testament to how powerful a story can be, explaining this huge global reality, language diversity, cultural differences through one single, dramatic, relatable event. It's a myth about a fall, yes, but not just a physical one. It's about communication fracturing, setting us on this path of, well, both incredible diversity and constant misunderstanding.
And this is where it starts to get really juicy, right? Because people always ask, is there any real history behind this? Any actual tower that might have sparked the myth?
Yes, the historical question.
Yeah.
And the answer points us straight to ancient Mesopotamia.
So there might be something to it.
Oh, absolutely. The scholarly consensus is pretty strong on this. There's almost certainly a historical echo. Historians, archaeologists, they've debated this for ages, and many scholars believe the story is directly linked to the real Mesopotamian ziggurats.
Ziggurats, okay, tell us about those.
Right, so these were absolutely monumental temple towers.
Yeah.
Stepped pyramids, basically, built in ancient Mesopotamia, Sumeria, Akkadian, Babylon, Assyria. Think of massive structures, built with millions of mud bricks rising in terraces, getting smaller as they went up, with a shrine or temple right at the very top.
Wow. So huge religious significance.
Immense. They weren't just buildings, they were seen as sacred mountains, designed to connect the earth with the heavens, a place for priests to interact with the gods, and for the gods, they believed, to come down to earth. The sheer size and importance would have blown away anyone who saw them.
Okay, so these things existed. Is there one specific ziggurat linked to Babel?
Yes, the most famous, the strongest candidate is definitely the Etemenanki.
Etemenanki.
It was this colossal ziggurat right in the heart of ancient Babylon, modern-day Iraq. It wasn't just a temple, it was the temple dedicated to Marduk, the chief god of Babylon. So hugely important politically, culturally, religiously.
And the name, does that connect?
That's the amazing part. Etemenanki, it means something like the foundation of heaven and earth, or the house that is the foundation of heaven and earth.
Oh.
Right, it fits the biblical story perfectly. A tower trying to bridge earth and heaven, a physical symbol of that exact ambition. Imagine the awe that inspired.
Okay, so who built this Etemenanki?
It was mostly built, or at least extensively rebuilt and glorified, by King Nebuchadnezzar II.
Nebuchadnezzar, the famous one.
The very same. Ruled Babylon around 605 to 562 BCE. He was a massive builder responsible for the Ishtar Gate, maybe the Hanging Gardens. He turned Babylon into this wonder of the ancient world.
And Etemenanki was part of that.
A central part. By all accounts, it was enormous, awe-inspiring. It symbolized Babylon's power, its wealth, its connection to the gods. It was a temple, sure, but also probably used for astronomy, and definitely a statement. Babylon is the center of the cosmos.
So for scholars, the Babel story isn't just pure fantasy.
Not at all. For many, it looks like a blend of historical memory, remembering these incredible structures like Etemenanki, mixed with that deep symbolic storytelling. While nobody's found a sign saying Tower of Babel was here, the ziggurats prove that people back then did build unbelievably massive towers reaching for the sky.
It makes the biblical story feel much more grounded in a real human experience.
Exactly. It proves the capacity and the ambition were real. These weren't just myths. They were engineering marvels, symbolizing power, religion, and that connection to the heavens.
That link to the ziggurats, especially Etemenanki, is really powerful. But it begs the question, if these things were so massive, so important, where did they go? How does something like that just vanish?
That's a really key question, and the answer actually adds another layer of meaning to the whole Babel story. The Etemenanki, despite being huge, well, it didn't last forever. It fell into ruin.
So was Alexander the Great? I feel like I've heard that.
That's a common association, but the evidence suggests it was already pretty ruined before Alexander even got to Babylon, around 331 BCE. Its end was likely more mundane, more typical for giant ancient structures.
Like what?
Probably a mix of things. Warfare was constant conquering armies, often destroyed or dismantled important symbols of the enemy. Earthquakes were also a risk in that region. Plus, just the sheer upkeep required for a massive mud brick structure. It was enormous. If an empire weakened or priorities shifted, these things could fall into disrepair pretty quickly. People would even scavenge the bricks for other buildings.
Right, so they were vulnerable.
Very. This cycle of building, destruction, rebuilding, or just abandonment was common. But think about what that means for the Babel narrative. The fact that a real structure like Etemenanki did ultimately crumble.
It kind of echoes the story's theme.
Exactly. It reinforces the message about the limits of human projects, the fragility of even our biggest ambitions. The idea that prideful projects don't last. It suggests the Bible story might be capturing this collective memory of a magnificent tower that did eventually fail, whether because of war, nature, or neglect.
Which just underlines the whole point about human limits and hubris.
Precisely. The historical reality, the ruins themselves, ends up supporting the myth's core message. Even our greatest works are temporary. There's a powerful connection between history and myth. The ruins become kind of a silent lesson.
And when we talk about historical connections, there's another figure often linked to this, right? Nimrod.
Ah, Nimrod, yes. He's a fascinating figure in this context.
He's not actually named as the builder in the main Babel chapter in Genesis, is he?
No, not in Genesis 11. But earlier in Genesis 10, he's described as this mighty hunter before the Lord, and crucially, a king whose kingdom included Babel, along with other cities in Shinar, the exact place the tower was built.
So the location connects him.
Right. And that connection led many later traditions, especially in Jewish and Islamic commentary, to explicitly name Nimrod as the king behind the Tower of Babel.
And how do they portray him?
Often as the archetypal tyrant, full of pride, wanting to unite everyone under his thumb, and specifically building the tower to challenge God.
So he becomes the embodiment of that defiant ambition.
Exactly. This link to Nimrod is really important because it shows how the Babel legend grew and evolved. It wasn't just about a place or a building. It became tied to specific, powerful figures and ancient beliefs about leadership, technology, and challenging the divine.
Tell me more about how he's seen in those traditions.
Well, in Jewish Midrash, Nimrod is often central to the story. He's not just ambitious, he's openly rebellious. Some texts say he wanted to build a tower to literally fight God, or at least to protect himself and his people from another flood, basically saying he didn't trust God's promise.
Wow, really doubling down on the defiance.
Yeah, and sometimes he's even credited with inventing idol worship to consolidate his power. His ambition is seen as totally self-serving, aiming for a world empire that would rival God's authority.
And in Islamic tradition.
Nimrod isn't named in the Quran itself, but Islamic scholars commenting on verses about a king who argued with Abraham about God often identify that king as Nimrod. Again, he's linked to pride, rebellion, and sometimes attempts to build structures to ascend to heaven or challenge Allah directly. His projects are then shown to be thwarted by divine intervention as punishment for his arrogance.
So Nimrod really personifies that human side of the story, the leader driving the project.
Perfectly. He represents that desire for centralized power, for a unified kingdom, which in the Babel story leads to this ultimate act of defiance. It adds another layer, showing how human ingenuity and organization, when driven by tyranny and pride, can lead to both amazing feats and total disaster. Including him makes the abstract idea of human ambition much more concrete and personal.
Okay, let's really get into the heart of it now. Let's break down the core symbols here, because they seem to speak to things way beyond just religion, right? Things we all grapple with.
Absolutely, they're incredibly universal.
Let's take 4 key ones. First, the tower itself. What does that really stand for?
Well, most obviously, it's human ambition. That drive to build, achieve, make a mark.
But maybe more than just ambition, like a specific kind.
Yeah, I think so. It's maybe the ambition to impose a single vision, a single truth on a world that's naturally diverse. It's like trying to force unity, maybe control everything from one central point. It embodies that collective will pushing against limits.
Okay, second symbol, the height, reaching for the heavens.
That's about pushing boundaries, isn't it? Defying limits, natural limits, maybe even spiritual ones. It's that very human urge to go higher, know more, achieve more power, maybe even become godlike, transcending constraints.
Makes sense. Third, and this feels huge for our deep dive, the confusion of language.
Oh, this is critical. It's not just about people suddenly speaking French or Swahili. It symbolizes a fundamental breakdown, misunderstanding, the inability to connect, to cooperate.
The end of shared meaning.
Exactly. It represents the collapse of that collective purpose. It's the opposite of unity. It's communication chaos.
And finally, number 4, the scattering of people.
This speaks directly to diversity, right? The fragmentation that happens when unity and communication break down. People dispersing, forming separate groups, cultures, nations, often defined and divided by the very languages they now speak.
So you put those 4 together, the ambitious tower, the boundary-pushing height, the chaotic confusion of language, and the fragmenting scattering.
Yeah.
It paints a really complex picture of the human condition.
It really does. And that's why we have to stress, these symbols aren't just for religious study. They are incredibly powerful tools for understanding modern life.
How so? Give me some examples.
Okay, think about the tower today. It could be massive global corporations, huge political alliances, or even giant tech projects like, say, building the infrastructure for the entire internet.
Right. Grand human projects.
The height. That's our relentless push in science, developing AI, the space race, economic competition, always trying to go further, higher, faster.
Okay, I see that. What about the language confusion?
Oh, that's everywhere. Political polarization, where both sides use the same words but mean totally different things. International diplomacy hitting dead ends. Social media echo chambers where understanding breaks down. It's the feeling of talking past each other.
Yeah, that feels very familiar.
And the scattering. That reflects the challenges and the beauty of our globalized world. We have all this diversity, but we constantly struggle with the misunderstandings and conflicts that arise from those differences.
So the story is basically a timeless map of our ambitions and our limitations.
I think that's a great way to put it. It's a constant reminder that for every big dream, there's often a limit, a potential consequence, maybe a need for humility. It highlights that tension between wanting total control and facing forces, inside us or outside us, that remind us we're finite.
It suggests real progress isn't just about building higher, but maybe building smarter, with more understanding.
Exactly. Building with respect for diversity, for different voices, not just imposing one grand vision.
If we drill down even more, what's the absolute core warning here? Is it just don't make God mad? Or is it something deeper, more universal that maybe we still miss?
That's a fantastic question. I think at its absolute rock bottom, Babel is a massive warning sign flashing danger. Unchecked pride ahead.
Hubris.
Hubris, yeah. Humanity wanted to reach heaven, make a name for itself, build this monument to its own awesome power that literally scraped the sky. But that drive, without humility, without considering the boundaries, without maybe a genuine collaborative spirit, it led straight to disaster.
It highlights a basic human flaw, doesn't it?
Totally. We strive, we succeed, and then sometimes we get carried away. We start thinking we're invincible, that we can do anything, even things that might belong to a higher power or transgress natural limits.
And that lesson applies everywhere, not just in religion.
Absolutely everywhere. You see it in science sometimes, when ambition outpaces ethics. You see it in politics, the ruthless grab for power, ignoring consequences. You see it in business, aggressive expansion that harms communities. Unchecked ambition is often their prelude to a fall.
So the story isn't saying ambition itself is bad.
No, not necessarily. Ambition drives us forward. But it's a warning against hubris, the kind of pride that blinds you. Blinds you to risks, blinds you to other people's perspectives, blinds you to ethical lines.
It makes you think you don't need anyone else or any higher principle.
Precisely. The Tower of Babel is this enduring symbol that even our most amazing collective efforts can collapse if they're built only on ego and arrogance without humility. It leads to confusion and division, not lasting unity. It really forces us to ask not just what we're building, but why and how.
Okay, let's shift focus slightly to the sheer impact this story has had culturally. Starting with religion, how have the major Abrahamic faiths used and interpreted this powerful narrative?
Right. Each tradition takes the core story and filters it through its own theological lens, making it a really dynamic teaching tool.
So how does Judaism see it?
For Jews, it's often seen primarily as an act of rebellion, of disobedience. The underlying idea is that God intended humanity to spread out to fill the earth after the flood, but instead they clumped together in Shinar.
Trying to resist God's plan.
Exactly. Centralizing power, trying to control their own destiny, maybe even protect themselves from God's judgment again. The Midrash, those rabbinic commentaries really run with this, painting the builders, often led by Nimrod, as openly defiant, even wanting to attack God or build the tower so high a future flood couldn't reach them. It highlights this human tendency towards misguided unity and defiance.
Okay, and Christianity, how does it fit in there?
In Christianity, Babel is a classic example of human pride, or hubris, setting itself against God's authority and perfection. It really underscores the idea of human sinfulness, our separation from God, showing why, in Christian theology, divine intervention and redemption are necessary later on.
Does it connect to other biblical events?
Oh, definitely. It's often contrasted sharply with the event of Pentecost in the New Testament.
Ah, where the apostles suddenly speak in different languages.
Exactly. At Pentecost, the Holy Spirit enables communication across language barriers to spread the gospel. So it's seen by many as a kind of symbolic reversal of Babel's confusion, not by going back to one language, but by achieving spiritual unity through diversity, allowing understanding despite different tongues. It signals a new way of connecting.
Interesting contrast. What about Islam?
While the exact Babel story isn't in the Quran like in Genesis, Islamic tradition has strong echoes of it. Commentaries and stories often discuss proud, tyrannical kings, frequently identified as Nimrod, who challenge Allah's power.
Similar themes of defiance.
Very similar. Tales describe Nimrod trying to build a tower or some contraption to ascend to heaven, maybe wage war on God or discover his secrets. The failure of these projects is then presented as a clear divine punishment for his massive arrogance.
So across the board, it's a moral lesson.
Absolutely. Consistently, it teaches about humility, the need for obedience to the divine, and the profound dangers of human pride and seeking power just for its own sake. It's a foundational story about our relationship with the divine, our fallibility, and the consequences of spiritual arrogance.
What really strikes you, though, about its influence beyond religion, in literature, in philosophy, because this story seems to have lit a fire under countless writers and thinkers.
Oh, it's astonishing how it keeps sparking creativity. The core idea is the grand ambition, the utter chaos of misunderstanding, language itself, its power and its limits. It's incredibly rich material.
You see it everywhere.
Everywhere. From medieval poets reflecting on why humanity felt so fragmented, to modern novelists exploring, say, the breakdown of communication in a globalized world. It becomes this go-to symbol for when things get too complex, too noisy, when meaning gets lost.
Any specific examples that stand out?
Well, the classic one has to be Jorge Luis Borges, the Argentine writer. His short story, The Library of Babel, is just brilliant.
Ah, the infinite library.
Exactly. He imagines this universe that is a library containing every possible book, all knowledge, but also infinite nonsense. It's endless, bewildering. You can search forever, but finding real meaning is almost impossible in the sheer overwhelming chaos of information.
So he turned the scattering of people into a scattering of meaning.
Precisely. The tower becomes a metaphor for our endless, maybe futile attempt to grasp everything through language and knowledge.
Wow.
The library is this terrifying symbol of never quite finding coherence, despite having access to literally everything.
Wow. And this theme keeps popping up.
All the time. Science fiction loves it. Think about AI creating new forms of babble, or attempts at cosmic communication gone wrong. Fantasy uses ruined towers as symbols of fallen pride or lost knowledge. Philosophers use it to probe the limits of reason and communication.
It speaks to our modern anxieties too, like information overload.
Definitely. The digital noise where having more information somehow makes understanding harder. The way we get stuck in our own bubbles online. Babel keeps serving as this lens to examine our attempts to organize knowledge, connect globally, and the frequent, frustrating failures or unintended consequences. Our struggle with unity and communication clearly isn't over.
And visually, artists must have had a field day with this. How do you even paint something like the Tower of Babel?
Oh, it's a spectacular subject for an artist. All that potential for architectural grandeur, huge crowds, drama, chaos, divine intervention, it's got everything.
Especially Renaissance painters, right?
Yes, particularly painters in the Renaissance and Baroque periods absolutely loved it. Let them show off their skills with perspective, detail, and complex compositions.
And the most famous one is probably Bruegel.
Peter Bruegel the Elder, absolutely. His 16th century paintings of the tower are iconic, especially the great Tower of Babel. It's just immense, this colossal, spiraling structure reaching into the clouds.
But it's not perfect, is it?
No, and that's key. It's visibly unfinished. Parts look like they're already crumbling. You can see different architectural styles clashing on different levels. Countless tiny figures are working, but it feels disorganized.
Symbolizing the flawed ambition and the coming chaos.
Exactly. Bruegel masterfully conveys the sheer scale of the project, but also its inherent futility. The seeds of its own destruction are visible even during construction. You see different groups working in different ways, almost foreshadowing the language breakdown.
Were there others who painted it?
Oh, many. From much earlier manuscript illuminations right up through the centuries to modern interpretations. Artists keep returning to it.
Using it as a metaphor still.
Yeah, definitely. As a symbol of chaos, social division, overwhelming complexity, failed grand projects. You see echoes in depictions of sprawling, dehumanizing cities or fractured monuments representing broken dreams. Think of the visual language in films like Blade Runner or Metropolis, that same sense of overwhelming, potentially alienating human construction. The visual power of Babel endures.
And it's not just high art or ancient history. It seems like Babel pops up surprisingly often in pop culture too. Movies, books, video games. Where do we see it showing up in our everyday entertainment? Expert.
It really is surprisingly common once you tune into it. In pop culture, it often serves as a kind of shorthand.
Shorthand for what?
Well, often for an impossible goal, like the ultimate challenge that seems doomed from the start because it's too big or too complex, or it's used to symbolize total communication breakdown, different groups, maybe aliens and humans who just cannot understand each other, leading to conflict.
Like a universal symbol for misunderstanding?
Exactly. And of course, it stands for that classic theme of human pride leading to a fall. Characters or whole societies reaching for godlike power and getting slapped down by their own arrogance.
Can you think of specific examples, like in games?
Oh yeah, video games love it. How many games have a giant multi-level tower as the final dungeon or a central location? Often filled with different factions or enemies who don't cooperate, reflecting that internal division. You have to ascend through the chaos.
Right. I can picture that. Sci-fi too.
Definitely. You see massive city towers, archaeologies that promise unity but end up creating rigid class systems and internal conflict. Or stories about building a space elevator or a global AI, only for hubris or a fatal flaw to cause a catastrophe.
Yeah.
Even talking about AI now, will it unite us or divide us? Often brings up Babel implicitly.
So these modern stories are tapping into those same ancient anxieties.
Absolutely. It shows how powerful and adaptable these old myths are. They keep providing a framework for us to explore our current fears about technology, about society breaking down, about the dangers of our own ambitions. The fact that Babel resonates in the video game proves its message is still incredibly relevant.
Okay, let's circle back to language. The story gives this poetic origin for language diversity. How does that old myth sit alongside what we know scientifically today about linguistics and our global reality?
It's a really interesting contrast, isn't it? Linguists today have this incredibly detailed scientific understanding of language evolution. They trace language families back thousands of years, analyze grammar, sound shifts, social factors. That's a whole complex science explaining how we got all these diverse tongues.
So we don't need the myth to explain it anymore.
Scientifically, no, but culturally, psychologically, the Babel story still has this powerful grip. It speaks to that deep feeling, maybe a kind of folk memory or longing for a time of easier understanding, a lost unity. Even if that unity never really existed, quite like the story says, the idea resonates.
And the core lesson about communication still holds.
Absolutely. The myth hammers home how critical communication is. Without shared language, and that could mean literal language, or shared cultural context, or even just agreeing on basic facts, unity collapses. The tower stopped because coordination failed. People couldn't understand each other.
And that feels extra relevant now.
More than ever, I'd say. We live in this globalized world, theoretically more connected than ever before. But language barriers are still huge obstacles in diplomacy, in business, in just basic human understanding between cultures. Misunderstandings fuel conflict.
So Babel is like this ancient warning sign for globalization.
You could see it that way. It's this reminder echoing down the ages. Connection isn't automatic. True progress, real cooperation on a global scale demands effort. It requires finding ways to build shared understanding across those linguistic and cultural divides. Otherwise, our big global projects risk falling apart, just like the tower, due to simple, or maybe not so simple, failures to communicate.
That's a really powerful connection. Let's push that idea further into our big technological projects today. When you look at things like the internet or the development of artificial intelligence, do you see echoes of Babel there? Our modern towers?
Oh, absolutely. The parallels are striking and, frankly, a little unnerving. It's a brilliant question to ask.
Take the internet first. How does that fit?
Well, think about its promise. It connects billions of people instantly, across borders. It allows information sharing on an unprecedented scale. In theory, it's this amazing tool for global unity and understanding, right? Almost like a new universal language.
Like the builder's initial dream.
Exactly. But what's happened in practice?
Well, it's complicated.
It's incredibly complicated. Because paradoxically, the internet has also created new forms of confusion and division. We have echo chambers, filter bubbles. People end up siloed, only hearing voices they already agree with. It's like new language barriers, but invisible ones.
And the sheer noise, the misinformation.
Right. It's harder than ever to find reliable information, to establish a shared reality. There's this constant babble of conflicting voices, often shouting past each other instead of talking. So the very tool that promised unity has, in some ways, created a new kind of digital babble, fragmenting understanding, even as it connects us technically.
Okay, what about AI? That feels like an even bigger tower we're building.
Potentially, yes. The stakes feel even higher. AI has this incredible power to unite us. Imagine solving huge problems like climate change or disease, or having truly seamless universal translation. That's a unifying potential.
But the flip side?
The flip side is also huge. AI could create profound new divisions. What if its reasoning becomes totally alien to us? What if AI-generated misinformation becomes indistinguishable from truth? What about biases baked into the algorithms, deepening existing inequalities? And then there's the whole question of control. Who guides its development? What if unchecked power leads to unforeseen consequences?
So both the internet and AI are like these massive, ambitious projects
that hold the promise of reaching new heights, but also carry the risk of creating new forms of chaos, confusion, and scattering if we're not careful. It echoes the original myth in a really contemporary, almost scary way.
That really brings up a critical, maybe even urgent question then. As we keep building these digital towers, expert, how do we actually try to make sure they lead to more understanding, more connection, rather than just more sophisticated confusion? What should we be thinking about?
That is the crucial question, isn't it? And honestly, we're just starting to figure it out as a society. It forces us to look beyond just the technology itself.
What do you mean?
Well, are we building these systems thoughtfully?
Yeah.
Are we actively trying to counteract bias in algorithms and data, demanding transparency? Are we teaching critical thinking and media literacy so people can navigate the information landscape? Or are we just letting personalization algorithms drive us further apart?
So it's about the intention behind the building.
Yes. And the design principles. The Babel story pushes us. Why are we building this? Is it for genuine collaboration for the common good? Or is there a hidden pride, a desire for control that might backfire and fragment us even more?
It sounds like we need to consciously design for understanding.
I think that's exactly right. We need to think about the architecture of understanding in the digital age. How do code and data shape human interaction? Are we building platforms that encourage dialogue or just amplify noise? Are we prioritizing shared facts, mutual respect? If we don't actively build in ways to foster understanding, we risk creating a future where our amazing technology actually leads to less shared reality, a digitally supercharged version of Babel's disunity.
That requires real vigilance, doesn't it?
Constant vigilance and a collective effort. It's not just up to the tech companies, it's up to all of us.
Stepping back a bit, how do people who study humanity itself, philosophers, social scientists, use Babel as a way to understand us more deeply?
It's a remarkably versatile tool for them too. For philosophers, Babel often serves as this powerful metaphor for the limits of human reason itself.
How so?
It suggests that while we can dream up these incredible plans, there might be fundamental boundaries to what we can fully grasp or control without acknowledging something bigger than ourselves, or at least the complexity of the world. It highlights that constant push and pull between our desire for one single neat explanation for everything and the messy reality of difference, diversity, multiple perspectives.
That tension seems key.
It really is. The story suggests this tension might be baked into the human condition. Thinkers like Wittgenstein explored how language isn't one perfect system, but many different language games, making universal understanding incredibly difficult. Which sounds a lot like Babel's outcome.
And for anthropologists or linguists?
Well, beyond the origin myth aspect, Babel's a potent reminder that language isn't neutral, it's power.
How's language power?
Whoever controls the language, who defines the terms, shapes the narrative, decides what gets communicated, holds immense influence over society. Being able to understand, and crucially, to be understood, is vital for people to function together, to have agency.
So the confusion of tongues was like the ultimate disempowerment.
Exactly. It destroyed their ability to act collectively. So the myth speaks volumes about social structures, about how fragile shared meaning is, and how essential it is for holding society together. It makes us think about how language literally shapes our reality, builds communities, defines who we are.
Some theories even suggest language affects how we think, right?
Yes, like the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. It suggests the language you speak might influence how you perceive the world. So even with perfect translation, fundamental understanding might still be challenging. Babel, in that sense, becomes this timeless exploration of how we build our worlds through words and how easily those worlds can drift apart.
Okay, we've covered so much ground: the story, the history, the symbolism, the impact. So after this really deep dive, what does it all boil down to? What are the big, enduring takeaways from Babel for us right here, right now?
Let's try and distill them.
Okay, first, it seems clear that unity, real unity based on collaboration and a good purpose, can achieve incredible things. When people work together effectively, progress can be amazing.
Definitely. Lesson 1, the power of positive unity.
Second, that warning about pride. Unchecked pride, hubris, it's like this universal acid that can dissolve even the greatest achievements. It leads to downfall, whether you're talking about empires or just, personal projects.
Lesson 2, beware of hubris, it's a constant danger.
Third, and this feels so crucial today, communication. Clear, honest, maybe even empathetic communication is absolutely fundamental. Without it, cooperation breaks down, plans fail, everything descends into confusion. We see it everywhere.
Lesson 3, communication is the bedrock.
Yeah.
Absolutely essential.
And finally, diversity. The scattering led to diversity, which the story presents almost as a consequence or punishment, but it's both, isn't it? It's a gift bringing different perspectives, enriching the world, but also a challenge, always requiring effort to bridge those differences.
Lesson 4, diversity is both a richness and a challenge, demanding understanding.
Right. It's a call to actively work at understanding each other across those divides.
And these lessons, they really do go beyond any single religion or culture. They apply everywhere: politics, business, science, even just how we interact with our neighbors day to day. Babel isn't just some old story, it's like this living guide.
A guide to finding that balance.
Exactly, that crucial balance between our big dreams and the wisdom, the humility, the real teamwork needed to make them happen in a good way. A way that actually connects people instead of dividing them further. It reminds us our greatest strength isn't just building things, but understanding each other, respecting differences, even when it's hard.
We've certainly covered a lot. We went from the ancient story in Genesis, dug into those possible links to the massive ziggurats in Mesopotamia, unpacked all that rich symbolism, and saw how Babel echoes through art, books, movies, right up to how we think about the internet and AI.
It's a story with incredibly long legs.
It really refuses to just be a historical footnote, doesn't it? It keeps speaking to us.
It absolutely does, because ultimately, the Tower of Babel isn't just a myth or a pile of ancient ruins. It's a story about us, about humanity.
Our ambition, our flaws.
All of it. Our relentless drive to push limits, the dangers when pride takes over, the beauty and the difficulty of living in a diverse world, and how absolute, vital, clear, empathetic communication is for anything worthwhile. It keeps reminding us about that delicate balance. Big dreams need wisdom and teamwork to land safely.
So, a final thought for everyone listening.
Yeah, maybe this. As we all continue to build our own towers, whether it's in science, in our communities, online, in global politics, how do you make sure your ambitions, your contributions, are actually fostering understanding and connection? How do you avoid accidentally adding to the confusion, the division?
That's a tough one.
It is. What does the architecture of real unity look like in a world filled with so many different voices, so many different visions? That's something really worth thinking about long after this deep dive ends today.